Imagine driving your car through a scenic mountain tunnel.
Right, like on a casual weekend road trip.
Exactly. To you, it's just this beautiful architectural feature. But to your brain, the shadow above the entrance is a sniper hide.
Wow.
Yeah, the walls of the tunnel are a fatal choke point. Your nervous system is just screaming at you, dumping adrenaline into your bloodstream, and it's absolutely convinced that you are about to die.
It is a terrifying scenario.
Hmm.
And it happens because the brain fundamentally loses the ability to separate the past from the present.
Right.
The mechanisms designed to keep a person alive in a war zone, they just start treating everyday civilian life as a lethal threat.
Which is exactly what we are exploring today in this deep dive. Welcome, by the way. Today we're looking at what happens when a traumatized mind purposefully shatters its own safety perimeter.
It's intense material.
It really is. We are unpacking the stunning, honestly kind of surreal finale of Alexander Thorne's story. Specifically, we're looking at Part 8 of this forensic reconstruction, which is titled The Extraction Protocol, covering Chapters 16 and 17.
Yeah, we've got a stack of intense source material here.
And our mission today is to decode the architecture of a mind under siege. So, just to set the scene for you, Thorne is a former combat engineer.
Right, at 12B.
Yeah. And he's battling severe combat-induced PTSD, along with a 100% disabling respiratory condition, COPD.
From his time breathing in toxic smoke at military burn pits, right?
Exactly. And for years, he has survived by living inside this strict, self-imposed 15-mile limit around his house. But today, he is getting in his Ford Ranger, and he is breaking that limit to follow a set of coordinates to an abandoned Cold War-era missile silo.
Which is just, I mean, it's a monumental shift for him.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're watching a man intentionally force himself into massive physiological panic.
Which is, frankly, an incredibly dangerous thing to do to a traumatized nervous system.
I can imagine.
When Thorne drives his truck east on U.S. Highway 82, ascending into the Sacramento Mountains, he isn't just taking a drive. He is initiating a forced march into his own trauma.
Like a literal combat mission.
Exactly. Breaking that 15-mile limit triggers a catastrophic alarm bell in his brain. The amygdala, the fear center, completely hijacks the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is the logical part, right? The part that knows he's just driving in New Mexico.
Right. But what's keeping him moving forward is his military programming. His deep, ingrained combat engineer training is just completely overriding his biology.
And we should probably clarify what a 12B combat engineer actually does, because it dictates, like, everything about how he sees the world on this drive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Their literal job is route clearance. They are trained to find the hidden things that are meant to kill you before those things detonate.
And that training fundamentally rewires visual processing. Well, a civilian looks at a road and sees a path. A combat engineer looks at a road and sees anomalies, disturbed dirt, a piece of trash, a shadow that just doesn't belong.
Wow.
Their survival depends on hyperfixating on potential lethal variables.
Which explains the incredible detail in the text where Thorne's mind acts as a literal altimeter as he drives up the mountain.
Right, calibrating the pressure.
Yeah, it's automatically calibrating the atmospheric pressure changes in his ears based on his past experiences flying in military C-130 cargo planes.
That's a soldier on a tactical insertion.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that tunnel we mentioned at the start, the tunnel at Cloudcroft, which, fun fact, is the only highway tunnel in New Mexico.
What's fascinating here is that for Thorne, that tunnel represents the concept of the violation zone.
Violation zone.
Yeah, his mind demands constant, rigorous tactical assessment to ward off the sheer terror of open space. But when he enters the tunnel, that open space collapses into a confined choke point.
So he's trapped.
Yes. He is suddenly trapped between agoraphobic panic on the open road and claustrophobic panic inside the tunnel.
I found myself thinking of it like an autoimmune disease of the memory.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Like, the immune system is supposed to protect you, but in an autoimmune disease, it attacks your own healthy tissue. Thorne's survival instincts, the very tools that kept him alive overseas, are now actively attacking his ability to just exist on a Tuesday.
Right.
I mean, he actually holds his breath as he drives through the flickering sodium lights of that tunnel.
That autoimmune metaphor is highly accurate. Because his brain is actively manufacturing threats where none exist, everyday civilian inconveniences escalate into critical mission failures.
Yeah, which makes basic survival logistics almost impossible to navigate.
Exactly.
Like getting gas, The logistical error that nearly breaks him.
Oh, the convenience store scene.
Yeah, he's running low on fuel, which forces him to pull into an Allsup's convenience store in Cloudcroft. And it's packed with tourists, Texans up in the mountains looking for snow.
A completely harmless environment for most people.
But this is where the collision between his combat reality and civilian reality reaches a boiling point. He tries to pay at the pump to avoid human contact, but he gets a chip error.
Of course.
So he has to go inside.
And the moment he breaches that crowded, enclosed structure, the sensory overlap is just immediate. The text notes the smell of fried burritos and old coffee.
Which seems so mundane.
It does, but we often underestimate olfactory triggers. The olfactory bulb has a direct neural link to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
So smells bypass the brain's rational filters entirely.
Precisely. That combination of stale coffee and grease instantly transports his nervous system back to the mess halls of Bosnia.
It's like, think about how you feel when someone stands a little too close to you in a grocery store line.
Sure, it's annoying.
Maybe a little uncomfortable. Now imagine your brain is chemically interpreting that annoyance as a literal, imminent threat to your life.
That's a huge distinction.
That's what's happening to Thorne with the guy in the fleece vest standing behind him. Thorne evaluates this tourist as an unpredictable variable and demands he step back to give him grid space.
He's enforcing tactical intervals in a convenience store line.
Yeah, I have to ask, is Thorne aware of how erratic he seems to these people, or is he completely lost in the delusion?
I wouldn't say he's lost in a delusion so much as he is trapped in a conflicting reality.
Okay, interesting.
To Thorne, the tourists are oblivious non-combatants wandering blindly through a minefield. Demanding grid space isn't an act of random aggression. It is a desperate, calculated attempt to impose order on a chaotic environment that is rapidly overloading his senses.
And the interaction with the locals is just chilling. The bored teenage clerk asks if he wants a chimichanga on promotion, and Thorne responds with this robotic severity like, I require fuel, just fuel.
Wow.
And then an older local in a camo hat notices Thorne's intense, thousand-yard stare and asks if he's heading out to the woods to hunt. Thorne looks dead at him and says, I'm clearing a lane.
That phrase, clearing a lane, becomes his anchor. When the human interactions become too overwhelming, he relies on the rote mechanics of his training.
But escaping the claustrophobia of the store and getting back to the open road doesn't really bring him relief, does it?
No, not at all. Isolation actually makes it worse.
Yeah, as he descends from the mountains onto US 285, the landscape turns into the high desert, what he calls the Badlands.
Out there, without any tourists to distract him, the internal noise just takes over.
Right. The New Mexico scrub brush morphs into the zone of separation in the Balkans. It's no longer a highway, it's an uncleared route.
Exactly.
Every single culvert he passes is flagged as a suspected IED location. Every discarded tire on the shoulder is a marker for a landmine.
It's relentless.
He drives strictly in the dead center of the lane, muttering to himself, trust the tread.
We also see the severe somatic manifestation of his tinnitus here. The text describes a cicada shriek.
That ringing in his ears.
Yeah. As he drives into the empty desert, that ringing harmonizes perfectly with the sound of the wind. The silence of the desert leaves a vacuum for his internal noise to fill. The auditory hallucination basically merges with the physical environment.
It redefines how you think about hypervigilance. Like, it strips away your ability to experience the world passively. You can't just look at a landscape. You have to analyze its threat vector.
Which is utterly exhausting.
And nowhere is that starker than when he hits Roswell. To us, Roswell is alien kitsch. It's green paint on storefronts, tourists taking selfies with plastic flying saucers.
Right, but to Thorne, peering through the lens of profound trauma, the alien theme is a literal psyop.
A psychological operation.
Yes, he perceives it as a government-engineered distraction designed to keep civilians looking up at the sky rather than looking at the military-industrial complex that actually built the region.
His brain cannot accept a whimsical explanation for the town. It has to fit into a paranoid, tactical framework.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it shows how hypervigilance completely overrides reality.
And while he's at a red light in Roswell, surrounded by this psyop architecture, a car full of teenagers pulls up next to him, blasting heavy music.
This part is so visceral.
Yeah, and the thumping bass of the music physically registers in Thorne's chest as the concussion of mortar rounds.
He categorizes the kids as non-combatants and rigidly ignores them.
But I want to pause on that bass for a second. His chest physically feels the mortar round. Like he's wearing augmented reality glasses that he can't take off, where every mundane roadside object is flagged in neon red as a lethal threat.
That is a brilliant depiction of a somatic flashback.
A somatic flashback.
Yeah. We often think of flashbacks as visual, like watching a movie in your head. But trauma is stored in the body. The nervous system remembers the physical pressure wave of a mortar.
Oh, wow.
So when that low-frequency bass hits his chest, his body reacts as if it is absorbing an actual explosive shockwave. The threat isn't a memory. His body is experiencing it in real time.
Which makes his final destination almost unimaginably terrifying. Because he isn't driving away from the danger, he's driving straight into the epicenter of his own psychological siege.
Exactly.
He leaves the highway, hits a dirt track using satellite imagery he literally burned into his memory, and arrives at the physical location of his extraction protocol just past sunset.
The Atlas F silo,
Right.
a decommissioned relic of the Cold War. These silos were massive underground complexes designed to house intercontinental ballistic missiles built to withstand nuclear strikes.
And he describes it as a scar in the earth and a Cold War coffin. It's a massive concrete pad with rusted vents leading underground.
So he finally makes it there.
Yeah, he breaches the old chain-link fence with a flashlight and a crowbar, and as he descends into the stale, rust-smelling darkness of the Launch Control Center, he is proofing the metal stairs.
Sweeping them with his flashlight, checking for traps on the way down.
Exactly.
The symbolism is heavy, but incredibly effective here. He's physically descending into the subconscious.
Going underground.
Right. Deep into a hardened structure built for global annihilation, which perfectly mirrors how deeply buried and destructive his own trauma is.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because in the center of this buried room, he sweeps his flashlight and finds a figure sitting in a rusted chair.
The Redacted Man.
Yes, the figure is wearing a 1997 battle dress uniform, but the face is just, it's gray static, like a corrupted television channel, and the name tape on the uniform is physically blacked out.
The text called him the Redacted Man, or the third party, the Exemption 6.
And when the figure speaks, Thorne doesn't hear it externally. The voice echoes directly inside the center of his own screaming tinnitus.
Right.
I mean, I'm struggling a bit with this scene in the silo. Suddenly there's a figure with a face made of static.
It's jarring.
Yeah. My first instinct as a reader was that the story just shifted genres into a paranormal thriller. But earlier in the story, we saw Thorne obsessing over his VA paperwork where the names of medics and personnel were literally blacked out, redacted by the bureaucracy. So, is his traumatized brain just physically manifesting the system that failed him? Could you clarify what exactly the Redacted Man represents?
That is exactly the mechanism at play. It is a profound, incredibly complex hallucination, not a ghost.
Okay, good to know.
The Redacted Man is a direct, externalized manifestation of Thorne's own war trauma, specifically originating from a horrific incident during his 1997 tour in Bosnia.
A McGovern-based mine fatality.
Exactly. He witnessed a civilian step on a landmine while he was on Overwatch.
The moment the world permanently broke for him.
Right. Thorne's mind has taken the immense guilt, the sheer horror, and the unprocessed trauma of that event and created an avatar for it.
Wow.
Trauma often fragments memory processing, making the memories feel disconnected from the self. His brain fills the redacted voids in his medical files with a literal redacted man.
That makes so much sense.
It is the missing piece of his own history, waiting for him at the bottom of a missile silo because he could no longer contain it in his conscious mind.
That is just incredibly heavy. So they have this confrontation in the dark. And it forces Thorne to realize that this extraction protocol, he's been obsessed with the idea that if he just reaches these coordinates, something will save him, is a total lie.
There is no rescue team.
No. The salvation he is seeking cannot come from the outside. No helicopter is coming to fly him out of his own head.
The dialogue here strips away all of Thorne's defenses. Thorne stands there, gripping his crowbar, and defends his actions to the hallucination.
He insists that he cleared the lane to 99.6% NATO standard.
He is clinging desperately to his training, to the rigid metrics of success he was taught by the military.
But the Redacted Man cuts right through the metrics. He tells Thorne, "You missed a mine." He explains that yes, Thorne cleared the physical ground, but he absorbed the kinetic energy of the explosion himself. He tells him, "You are the repository."
In physics, energy doesn't just vanish, right? It transfers. The hallucination is forcing Thorne to confront the psychological equivalent of that law. Thorne thought he was making the world safe by obsessively clearing explosives and enforcing perimeters, but all he did was internalize the blast wave.
The trauma didn't dissipate, it just took up residence inside his nervous system.
Exactly.
Thorne literally begs the figure to extract him. He just wants the cicada noise in his head to stop. But the redacted man refuses.
He tells Thorne that he is the engineer of his own siege.
Thorne built the defensive grid at his house. Thorne built the bunker around himself to keep the world out. And because Thorne built the siege, only Thorne can end it.
Which leads to the climax.
Mm.
The figure issues a final command. He orders Thorne to detonate using what he calls the chain matrix.
The chain matrix. Thorne visualizes this improvised mental clearing charge. He screams, letting out decades of pressure, and he detonates his own psychological siege in the dark of that silo. And when he opens his eyes, the chair is empty, the hallucination is gone, and for the first time in 20 years, the shrieking cicada noise is replaced by silence, a temporary sonic peace.
This raises an important question, though. What does this detonation actually mean? The psychological mechanism of that detonation is radical acceptance.
Radical acceptance.
Yes. For 20 years, Thorne's entire existence has been about preventing an explosion, maintaining the perimeter, shrinking the 15-mile limit, controlling every variable to stop the inevitable.
Right, the vigilance.
The chain matrix represents the moment he finally stops running.
So what does this all mean for Thorne? Like, I want you, the listener, to imagine carrying a bomb inside you for decades, feeling it tick every single day, exhausting all your energy just to keep it from going off.
Unthinkable.
Only to realize the absolute only way to defuse it is to let it explode on your own terms.
Exactly. By accepting the redacted man's truth, by accepting that he is the repository of the pain, he stops fighting the trauma.
He just lets it happen.
He lets it wash over him, letting the psychological structure he built collapse. And that surrender is what finally grants him that moment of genuine peace. The static breaks because he stopped trying to tune the radio.
Wow. It's an incredibly powerful resolution to a harrowing journey. We track Thorne from that claustrophobic, panic-inducing drive up the Sacramento mountains, through the surreal somatic triggers of Roswell, all the way to this breathtaking internal realization at the bottom of an Atlas F silo.
The hardest terrain to navigate is always internal.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder that true peace sometimes requires us to stop barricading the doors and finally face the redacted, hidden parts of ourselves.
Thorne's extraction wasn't a physical removal from a place. It was an extraction from his own resistance to the pain.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over today. Thorne found his silence. He found it at the bottom of a cold, isolated missile silo, 80 miles away from his family, far outside the safety of his 15-mile limit.
But he can't stay down there in the dark forever.
No, he can't. When he eventually has to pick up his flashlight, climb those rusted metal stairs, and walk back out into the blinding New Mexico sun, will the cicadas return with the wind, or has he fundamentally rewritten the architecture of his own mind?
A single moment of clarity doesn't erase decades of trauma, but it does offer a new blueprint for how to live with it.
Something to think about next time you catch yourself trying to control the uncontrollable? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.